Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at importing an external audio file to use on the Zoom H6 for overdubbing purposes. Let's say you've downloaded a file off the internet or you've received a file from someone you're collaborating with and you want to import it into the Zoom so that you can add additional tracks over that track. The Zoom H6 does not allow for you to directly import such a file. If you want to use that track, there are two ways you can do it. One is to re-record the track onto one of the tracks on the Zoom and then you can overdub. Now let's say you didn't want to do that, you didn't want to tamper with the file, you didn't want to re-record it, and you just wanted to import it and use it as it is. So step number one is to download your audio file and then format it so that it matches the settings on your Zoom. In my case, my Zoom is set to 48 kHz audio and 16-bit WAV files. I use Adobe Audition to format my audio, but you can use any software that you have access to. The next step is on your Zoom, you want to create a stereo pair. What that means is you're going to combine two of these tracks to form a stereo pair. What you do on the Zoom is just press the two together and they'll form a stereo pair. And you can see on the screen it's changing from single tracks. You press and they become a stereo pair and they are linked. This is important because that's where our audio track is going to sit. Once you've created the stereo pair, you want to record scratch audio onto that stereo pair. And this could be just silence or just any other audio. We are not actually going to use that audio, but we want to create a track that we are going to copy our actual audio onto. So just arm the tracks and then just record any audio. You want to make sure that your scratch audio is slightly longer than the backing track that you're going to be copying onto that track. So in my case, I just made my scratch audio 1 second longer than the downloaded audio that I have. The next thing we want to do is to access the SD card and access the file that we've just recorded. And you do that by either connecting your Zoom to your computer and then choose the card reader mode instead of the audio interface mode. So make sure you choose card reader and then your computer will be able to see your Zoom as a card reader. You can also just remove the card from your Zoom and use a card reader on your computer. All we need is to be able to access the SD card. Now on your computer, navigate to that SD card and navigate to the folder where you recorded the scratch track. You'll see the track as a stereo track, and what indicates that it's actually a stereo track is that you'll see the names of the two tracks that were combined at the end of the name of the file. So in this case, I have 1 and 2 tracks combined, and you see 1 and 2 in the name of the file. We don't need this track, so what we do is move that file out of that folder onto your desktop or somewhere else. The only thing we're going to need from that file is the name. Now when you move the scratch audio out of that folder, make sure you don't move the HPRJ file that is in that folder. This is a very important file because it's the one that contains information about how to read that track correctly. The next thing you want to do is to copy the downloaded file or the file that you're going to be using as the backing track into that folder. Once you've copied it into that folder, you want to rename it to the same name as the file that you moved out of that folder. It's very important that these names match. Once you've done that, the importation part of our process is actually done. Put the SD card back into your Zoom if you had taken it out, or just disconnect the Zoom from your computer. So when you go to the Zoom, you can actually play the file that you copied. Now that you've imported your file onto the Zoom, the next process is now the overdubbing process. And for you to do that, all you need to do is to go into the menu, go into the project menu, scroll down to Overdub, and then select that. Once you've done that and you come out of the menu, any track that has something recorded on it will show up in green on your interface. And so you can see tracks 1 and 2 are lit, which means that is where the track is. And for you to overdub, you just need to arm the track that you're going to be recording the next audio. And once you hit record, your backing track will play and you can record on top of it. And there you have it, importing external audio onto your Zoom for overdubbing.